Isla, and thank you to the council for the opportunity. It's an honor, and I'm excited to share my career journey with you today. When I think about my job, what do you think comes to my mind? So I'm gonna take a little sip. I just sit there for a second on that question, and I'll come back to it. So, when I was maybe 20s, in my 20s, I used to remember everything, so I have little notes. Because, now I have a few gray hairs. All right, so I am convinced that my story is different than yours, because we are unique. If we were to get fingerprinted, the results will show that we are unequivocally different from one another, right? But at the same time, I believe that my story might have some similarities to some of you, and perhaps more similarities with some of your students. When you're not born in this country, life could be quite different. There is something called culture shock that I learned when I was taking ESL classes years ago. So I arrived in this country in 1999, and I was born in Guatemala. Came from a middle-class family. They had a family business for years, and when my grandfather passed, everybody took their own piece and ran with their side of the business. And I remember when I was in middle school, I used to get home from school, and my mom would say, okay, you eat lunch and try to do your homework, and if you don't finish it, you're going to the factory and you're taking snacks for your dad. So I remember going over to the factory, help my dad supervise some employees, and finish my homework. And then after I finished my homework, I jumped in and I started working. That was in middle school. And as years went by, I developed a resilience and a sense of work ethic and responsibility and grit. And then when I enrolled in high school, things started to go a little sideways, because there were some decisions that my dad was making that were not the best decisions for the business. But I never saw him cheat anybody or do anything unethical when he was conducting his business affairs. So I always had this sense of honesty and integrity instilled in me, and of hard work. And but when I enrolled in high school, probably a year before I finished high school, my dad needed to come to the States because we were losing everything. And I still remember, whenever you accomplish something, there is a sense of pride, right? That we all experience when we accomplish something. So the town where I was born, our family, had a name, and everybody in town knew who we were, because we were known for being successful in business and contributing to the community and helping people. So when our businesses started going sideways, of course, you know that when you go through a loss, there are some struggles and hardships that you go through, but people probably don't know. They only have the perception of what was known to them. And I remember when I finished high school, my dad asked me, do you want to come to the States or do you want a car for your graduation? And so, when he asked me that question, all I saw was freedom and opportunity. And I said, no, I don't want a car. I can buy a car if I go to the States. So I came to the States, And about 3 months after, I lost my status, and I became an illegal immigrant. Because the intention was for me to go to college, and I never, I didn't know anybody that had attended college in the States, so I had no clue how to even register for college. So I lost my my student visa, and I had no choice but to start working. And I remember my first job. We were living in my aunt's house in Inglewood, California. And I remember my first job in construction. I was carrying the five-gallon buckets just filled with fresh made cement, and they were very heavy. I was, I think 17, 18 at the time, and they were very, very heavy. I had to carry them for about a block, and it was very tough. It was very difficult. But every time I got home after work, I had this sense of accomplishment, that I did something, that even though, you know, my dream of becoming a doctor was probably being shattered, even though I was in a new country, in a new environment, and I wasn't able to communicate, I still felt that, you know, I was accomplishing something, because I saw a lot of people that didn't have work at the time, and I was glad that I could work. So when I met my another of my uncles in one of the weekend gatherings, and he was an LVN, and he was a nursing supervisor in a convalescent is not a hospital, but a convalescent center in Sun Valley, California. And he asked me, he says, are you interested in working in healthcare? And I said, absolutely. So I moved in North Hollywood with them, and then I remember the first time I went over to work, actually to fill out the paperwork. I didn't know any English. The only English I knew was, you know, table, chair. And I remember sitting in the lobby at the convalescent center, waiting for my uncle to come over and show me what to do. And his supervisor, the general manager, came over to the lobby where I was at. And he was a tall, dark African American person, and now I know what he asked me. He asked me, are you looking for anybody, can I help you? And I said, no. Because I was so, you know, I didn't know any English. And politely he said, okay, that's okay. And he went his way. Then a minute later, my uncle came over and got me, and we filled out some paperwork. And then he introduced me to everybody at work. I didn't even have to interview, because it was, you know, my uncle was the supervisor. So I think, you know, at that moment I learned a little bit of, you know, privilege, being privileged, and how important having connections is. And then, you know, he introduced me to everybody, including his boss. And at that time, you know, I said hi. And so, you know, they graciously, they gave me an opportunity. And 3 months later, I received my CNA certification. But he asked me, he says, in order for you to work here, you have to learn the language. You have to learn to communicate. You have to at least learn how to say good morning, good evening, have good evening, have good night. And so I enrolled in ESL classes, Monday through Friday. And during the weekends on Saturday, I went over to have my CNA certification classes. And I remember every day when I went to school, I couldn't miss a day, because the mentality that I had was, if I miss tonight, I will not know what to say tomorrow. Okay, that's how I saw that. And then, you know, one of my friends was in school with me, and we will always joke, you know, we can't miss a day, because if we don't go today, we will not be able to talk tomorrow at school, at work. And so I started attending classes, and of course, the first thing they taught us was the alphabet, right? A, B, C, D, E, A, C, D. Then I remember we were going to church, and I bought a bilingual Bible, and that's how I started learning. So the Bible helped me. And I will compare, verses in Spanish, and I will read them in English, and I will read them over and over again. And that's how I started learning. And then I started, listening to music in English, watching TV in English, even if I didn't understand at first. But being exposed to something gives you an opportunity to learn that something. And so then I remember I also bought a dictionary, but I didn't have a clue what a dictionary was because the dictionary was in English. Then I decided to buy a conversational dictionary, and I remember the first sentence I learned to say, I would like to speak with you and have a conversation with you, but I do not speak English. And people will tell me, you're speaking English. And I will say, I would love to speak with you, but I don't know English. So, continued to go to school. One of the teachers saw something in me, and she encouraged me to take my GED. And I said, I can't take the GED in English because, I know what uno más uno is, 1 + 1, but I don't know what 1 + 1 is in English. And she said, no, take the GED in Spanish. Take the GED in Spanish. So I took the GED in Spanish after I finished my CNA classes, and with my CNA classes, I had a dictionary there, and my uncle also helped me understand the material, so I was able to pass the exam, and that gave me it's a CNA certification, and nowadays probably that is not very respected, but for me that was a huge accomplishment. And I continued to work there, and then I took my GED and I aced it. And then I said to myself, with the GED and with a little bit of English, then maybe I can enroll in college one day. At work, I saw, my uncle who was an LVN. There were a couple of other LVNs. There was an RN on site as well, and then his boss, who was a business person, and everybody at work that I remember had such a great attitude. They were very welcoming. So I experienced that at work, and then I experienced that with the teachers as well. They were very welcoming, and that made me feel like I was in a safe place, and that I could dream, and that I could have aspirations. And so I continued to go to the, I started with the basic ESL program. Then, I got to a point where I couldn't go any farther because I graduated from the advanced program. And one of my teachers said, you need to enroll in college classes. And I said, what are you talking about? How do I do that? So at this time I was in Chicago, and I enrolled at Truman Harris College in Chicago. And I wanted to take credit courses in college, but of course, I had no clue how to construct sentences. And so they did a placement test, of course, and I took 2 classes. I think it was English 98 in 95 or 98 or something. And I loved those two classes because they taught me how to compose and a lot of essays to write. And I love that because I had an opportunity to talk about me and my journey and my dreams and my goals. And so I took that as an opportunity to practice my writing skills. And then, I passed those classes, and it was time for me to take college credit classes. And I remember my first English 101 at that time it was at Wilbur College in Chicago. And so I just continued with, the sense of purpose that my dad had instilled in me from the very beginning when I was in middle school. And I remember those thoughts came rushing when I encountered challenges and maybe days when I was discouraged because I couldn't learn as fast as I would want to. And that sense of responsibility and grit and determination helped me to continue. And also seeing that, the teachers were very open to and very welcoming. And I didn't, now when I was thinking about today, I was sharing with my wife, I don't think I remember one teacher or one situation where the teacher made me feel uncomfortable or made me feel like, I was inadequate or if I couldn't accomplish my dreams. Pretty much everybody told me that this was the land of opportunity. And if I work hard, and if I put the time in, and if I make sacrifices, that good things will happen. And I remember when I met my wife in 1998, I had the opportunity to go to college after my daughter was born. And I finished my bachelor in 3.5 years. The last semester, in one summer I think I took about 18 courses, 18 credits. The last semester I took 21 credits. Last semester I took 21 credits. I got home one day and my wife asked me, she said, why don't you go ahead and rent a room and I'll cook for you and you can just come pick up your food or I'll take it over there to you, but you come home and I'll see you. So I asked her, I said, do you want me to finish this semester or you want me to finish in 1 year? And she said, no, never mind, go ahead and finish. So that was in Texas, when we were living in Texas. So in 1995, before I met my wife, I was working in one of the hospitals in Chicago as a CNA in one of the telemetry floors. And I witnessed a hemodialysis treatment being performed in one of the patients' bedside, and that intrigued me so much. And I started asking questions, and I became a good friend of the nurse who was performing the treatment, and she coached me and she asked me, she told me where to go and where to apply. And in 1995, that same year, one of the dialysis providers gave me an opportunity with my CNA experience to go into dialysis and learn dialysis. And that is also a very intense learning program, but with all the determination and the grit that I already had developed, I got my certification and I started working in dialysis. And I worked in a chronic unit for about 6 years, and then I transferred to what's called the acute program. I think St. Mary's Hospital here has an acute program where they do dialysis bedside. And the program that I was working with in Chicago, we covered 21 hospitals. And I remember walking around those hospitals with an stethoscope around my neck and remembering where I had come from. And it gave me so much energy and so much joy for what I had accomplished. And then, in college, when I took English, I think it was 201 at Dallas Baptist University in Texas. One of the teachers that taught English, she had a reputation among the university of being the toughest teacher in that institution. And she was assigned to me, and to me, it was just another thing to conquer, right? And I remember when we started the class, we started with about 35 students, and I shared with my wife that at the end of the semester, only about 12 or 15 graduated from the class. Then one of my history classes, I remember American history, one of the classes I had to have a thesaurus with me when I was reading, because I couldn't understand the level of the language when I was reading. And I stayed overnight. It took me 4 hours, an average of 4 hours, to read one chapter and to understand it. So, I think, again, if I didn't have the support and the guidance and the coaching of the ESL teachers, I think, my life would be a little bit different. And in 2006, when I finished college, I wanted to become a manager. And the company gave me an opportunity to become a manager. And one quote that always has helped me in my professional life and also in my personal life. I heard Charles Swindoll say one time that life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we react to it. And when I look at my life and I see, the struggles and the challenges that I went through, and how I was able to navigate, it gives me a sense of gratitude. When I asked you earlier, what do you think comes to my mind when I think about my job? Gratitude is what comes to my mind, because this country has given me the opportunity to find my way to make a life for myself and for my family. And in 2014, this company I worked for gave me an opportunity to become a regional director. At the time, we were living in Texas, and they asked me if I was willing to come over to California. My wife wasn't very thrilled with the decision that I made, but I think she's okay now after 9 years. That's when I met Sheila. And the clinic, I think, when I came over, Sheila, I think we had just acquired ideas, if I'm not mistaken. And so of course, with any merge, any acquisition, there are different policies and processes that you have to adapt to. And I remember, I remember when people tell me, I will try, I will remember Yoda from Star Wars. From Star Wars, or? Yeah. And he will say, what does he say? He says, try. No, he says, do or do not, but do not try. Do or do not, but do not try. And that has been So that's what I have always, and even with my kids, that's what I say when they say, well, I will try. I would say, do or do not do, but do not try. And then, of course, Henry Ford, right? He says, if you believe, if you think that you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. So now I have been a regional director of operations for 15 dialysis clinics for about 9 years. And of course, the next step is probably a vice presidency, who knows? But I never want to continue to grow. And one of the things that I think when I remember is the attitude of the teachers that I had. That because they created an environment in the classroom of inclusion. And that's one of the things that I like about California, that it gives people the opportunity to be themselves, and it encourages us to also respect the individual. So I encourage you to continue to be a light to your students and become a little bit involved not in their life, but in their learning journey. And be available, be accessible to them, because those were some of the things that really helped me. And as life will have it, my wife is a certified teacher, and when we were in Texas, she started teaching ESL classes. So I think she feels a little bit compelled to give to the community as well. But going from being an ESL student to marrying somebody who also has a heart for teaching, I think, it's part of, some people will say it's part of the cosmos, right? But to me, I think life has been very, very good to me. And going back to the original question, as I said, what comes to my mind when I think about my job is gratitude, because I have been very blessed and very fortunate to be here and to be able to at least, have gone to college and have purpose in my life. We have about 1,500 patients in the South Bay area that undergo dialysis every day. And I, when they interviewed me for the position 9 years ago, I said, I want to be able to impact people's lives and hopefully contribute to make their life better. So I do thank you for the opportunity again, and I don't know if you have any questions, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I have 3 questions. Number one, you said you first got here, you were 3 months and then you were illegal. How did you get legal? Number 2, you said you went to college. You finished in 3.5 years. Were you working during that time? And number 3, why didn't your wife want to move to California?
The third one, I have no clue. My son is 15, and I can't remember what was the situation. He was talking to my daughter, and he goes, I said, exactly. So I don't know why she didn't want to move to California, but now if you ask her if she wants to go somewhere else, she will tell you no, because every Saturday our routine is we go hiking. It's beautiful. The state is, yes, it's extremely expensive, right? But the geography is so beautiful. And so I think, she's a person that doesn't like, she's very structured. She doesn't like change. And I came on a student visa. And because I didn't enroll in college, I lost it. I lost my status. And then that was in 1989. 1999, I met my wife, 10 years later. And we got married in 1999. She is a citizen. She was born in Puerto Rico, and that's how I became legalized. Any other questions?
What about, how did you go to college though? Did you work? How did you?
Oh, yes, sorry, I missed that question. So I have always worked full-time. With the industry that I'm involved in dialysis, people have the option to work 3 days a week for 12 hours. For 12 hours. And when I looked at the curriculum and the classes schedule, I decided to go to school on Tuesdays and Thursdays and work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So my wife, I remember we only had one car at the time. My daughter was maybe a year old, and I remember I used to open the clinic at 2 in the morning. My wife would get up with my daughter, and she would take me to work. And we did that for about 3 years, 3.5 years. Yes. Yeah. Okay. No questions. Thank you.
Thank you so